Behind the pomp and ceremony of military duty, some soldiers struggle to reintegrate back into UK society. What more could the British government do in order to help veterans in transition? 24-year-old veteran Paul Jacobs was blinded by a Taliban bomb while on patrol in Afghanistan.
Shrapnel ripped through my right side of my body. Shrapnel went through my nose, cut through my right eye. The burns inflaming my left eye, and shrapnel lodging in the forehead of my brain. And cutting through my cheek and my mouth, and obviously my throat was burnt and teeth were ruptured, and yeah, a bit of a bloody mess. When my son was born, because of what I experienced in Afghanistan, he's crying. He used to send me over the edge, and it used to really twist my nerves really badly. I mean, there's only so much one man can take who is screaming and crying, and when you've heard men cry and scream, it's just something that never leaves you. I was kicked out of the army on the 27th of March 2013. I've never been contacted since. I was dropped like a lead balloon. I was living on my own in a flat down in Ramsgate, and the British Legion couldn't help me. And all the fundraising that I've done over the years for all the military charities, no one put a hand out to help me. I'm completely blind and not one person put a hand out to help me, apart from the community. Friends, and relying on friends. But I shouldn't have to rely on friends.
Does society and the state actually have a responsibility to those who have served? The 200-page Veteran Transition Review published in February 2014 looked at the aspects of transition, including employment, health and housing. It made over 50 recommendations, including that the Ministry of Defence and Armed Forces should be more active in changing perceptions of service leavers. All military personnel should complete an online personal development plan, beginning at the end of basic training. All service leavers who have completed basic training should be eligible for the full transition support package. Alex Cooper, one of the main consultants on the Veteran Transition Review, explains why good transition is so important in the forces.
As we point out in the review, transition is important for a wide number of reasons. Not least is the duty of care that the MOD owes the men and women who serve the country, but also for reasons of recruitment, retention and re-enlistment. Understanding that they're going to have a good deal out of their time in the forces will attract people to join the armed forces, to stay longer, and if they wish to re-enlist if they decide to. Those prone to less successful transition because of any number of reasons deserve or indeed need greater support. And particularly those who suffer wounds, both mental or physical, whilst in service, definitely deserve a greater degree of support than the average service leaver.
Forces career events such as this one in Aldershot are often the first point of call for service leavers. But veterans who serve 4 years or less struggle to find a job in 6 months, compared to some 85% who receive career transition support. Professor Jamie Hacker-Hughes is calling for soldiers to be routinely screened to reduce the number of personnel developing mental health conditions.
The military take people with fairly low levels of formal education and educational attainment through to very high performing people. So the needs are going to be very different. Also, the length of training that people are entitled to on resettlement varies a great deal. If you've served for a long time, you're entitled to a big chunk of resettlement training. If you leave very quickly, currently you're entitled to nothing or next to nothing, and it's that bit that needs improving. Well, what's meant to happen is that when people leave, they're given a form which they should take along to their GPs and say, look, this is me, I've been in the military, this is my history, and here I am. But that relies on the individual to actually go along to their medical practitioner with the form. And that's a big sort of crack in the system at the moment. What also should be happening is that if someone is actually having active treatment before they leave, there should be a handover to the GP. But often there isn't a GP. Often the GP isn't known. So that too does need improving.
Matt Fossey is Director of the Veterans and Family Studies at Anglia Ruskin University.
One of the challenges is actually helping people, veterans, people when they're in the army, to actually think about what are the skills that I have and how do I translate that into what works in civilian life. Because if you take an infantry soldier, like a rifleman or something like that, then actually, you know, what's your job in the army? And it's to shoot people, you know, and to be shot at, which doesn't translate very neatly into, you know, working for the post office, does it? But actually some of the skills that you learn when you're in the infantry, you know, about teamwork, following orders, you know, thinking for yourself as well, all things that translate very, very neatly into civilian jobs, but people, I don't think, are given the skills necessarily to say, well, what do I do and what would that look like in a civilian post? There's a big problem with connecting people to the right types of support that's available, but the other problem as well is connecting them to the to make sure actually the support they get is the right type of support, because as I said, there's lots of sort of organisations that are springing up that may be a little bit dubious in the types of interventions that are offering, and people have to be mindful that that's out there. And so, as I say, it's a sort of both a blessing and a curse. There's lots of support, but the curse is that actually the support doesn't talk to each other. So there's lots of money floating around, but it's not necessarily joined up. And also, we're not sure that the types of support that's on offer is necessarily the right types of support.
What does the future hold for former soldiers like Paul? The MOD said in a statement that recent measures such as the recovery career events, soldier helplines and employment advice program Future Horizon will help personnel. However, this documentary has identified signposting, the lack of medical support and transfer of veteran skills as issues that still need to be improved. But at large, society needs to change its perception towards veterans and stop considering them as damaged victims, but instead see them as highly skillful individuals that have a lot to offer.